Hello, and welcome to our program Where God Weeps, a program in which we invite missionaries, sisters, priests, and bishops from all around the world to speak to the situation of the Universal Church, particularly where she suffers discrimination and persecution. The country of Kenya in East Africa is one of the more prosperous nations on the continent. The political landscape is relatively stable, and the GDP growth is strong. The nation, though, still faces challenges such as income inequality, corruption, and vulnerability to internal and external economic shocks. The most problematic issue remains high unemployment, poverty, and hunger, with almost 9 million of its 56 million strong population living beneath the poverty line. Here today to talk with us about some of the concerns and the work of the Catholic Church in trying to care for the population is Bishop Joseph Mwongela, the new Bishop of Kitui, Kenya. Your Excellency, thank you for being with us here today in our program.
Thank you very much, Mark, and I'm happy to be with you and share my story with you and the whole Church.
Your Excellency, just to introduce you a little bit, can you tell us about the circumstances of your growing up?
My name is Bishop Joseph Mwongela. I am the second born in a family of 8. Both my parents are alive, but unfortunately my elder brother passed on about 4 years ago, and we pray that he may rest in peace. The other members of the family are there. As I said, my parents are alive. My other sisters are there. There are 5 sisters, and I have now one other brother. They are both alive and they are working in different places. My sisters are all married, a little bit, some close, others a little bit far from home, but we always try to gather for common celebrations during Easter and Christmas, and then other events that can bring us together.
So you were a close family, and
yes,
you are also an extended family. You have many cousins in the area,
yes,
and you grew up in a rural environment, in a village. Can you tell us a little bit about what your growing up was like?
Education just came with the missionaries. My mom was born in a family without education. Our grandparents, my dad never went to school. Luckily, one of my uncles was a teacher. Then asked my grandfather, maternal grandfather, to allow my mom to go to school. Through that, she at least had basic education, and so that was very good.
This was a first for the females in the family,
yes.
that your mother would receive education.
Was the first one actually to receive education and get through that also the Christian faith. And she's the one who introduced Christian faith in our family, and we are very proud of her for that. Very staunch Christian, very strong Catholic, very happy, and I found her very supportive at my call when I want to join priesthood.
I want to get to your vocation story in a little bit, but for your mother, for both your parents, this must have been a great joy when you made your decision to become a priest after her, if you will, introduction to the faith, and the faith then being introduced into your family. It must have been a great moment of pride for her when you became a priest.
It was a moment of pride, maybe also shocking, because being a poor family, growing up as peasants, I was doing very well in school, and it was just a moment when I was supposed to go to university. But I decided if I go to university, I would rather forget about priesthood. I thought it would be too long before I come and then begin again. So should I join or should I not join? And then I made that decision. It was shocking to many because they weren't expecting it. But my parents supported, my brothers and sisters, my friends, and I have been happy throughout that time because of the support that I got.
You were appointed bishop on March 17, 2020, the Bishop of Kitui,
yes,
in Kenya, which is also your home,
yes,
diocese as well.
Yes.
Was this a shock for you? Was it something that came like a lightning bolt? Or was there some sort of preparation that led you to understand that perhaps you would be called to be a bishop?
That is the last thing that I would have expected. And let me say, unfortunately, I'd been the Vicar General for the diocese. And we had a bishop with us who was later promoted to become an archbishop in Nyeri Archdiocese. And now, because we are working together with him, I remember asking him, because I knew there must be a process going on and someone would be made a bishop. I asked him, is it possible that you can let me have another duty? I can even go for a sabbatical, go to teach, so that I don't have to be caught up in this when a new bishop comes. He told me, okay, let's wait and see. Then it's a good decision, but there's still time to decide, and let's just do our best. And I did my best in the service, just to work for the church. And it just came like a shock when the nuncio called me, he wanted to see me. And I thought just about to discuss the issues of the diocese, and he asked me, how is life and how are things in the diocese, and when are you going to get a bishop? I said, I don't know, but the sooner the better. So he told me, I think we should be happy because finally the Holy Father has found a suitable replacement for a bishop in your diocese. And I clapped. I said, no, this is so good. Now at least we have a bishop. I said, but wait a minute. That man is you. That now
you must have had a heart attack.
Deflated me completely after clapping and all these. But the main challenge thinking about our diocese, which is a hardship diocese, has been a missionary diocese, many challenges, and we had a very, very powerful bishop in one way or another was doing well, making things work, and very full of initiatives. So I was asking myself now, and I even made to myself, I said, I would even have wished to take over in another diocese, but not in this one, where I've seen what is happening and though we have worked together. But the nuncio really told me, we'll support you, you'll make it, you've been there, you know the place. We've done as people, and they seem to also agree that you can manage. So it's not you, it's the people and God who has called you. So if you entrust yourself to God, I'm sure it'll be done.
And this is what has indeed happened after now 2 years or 3 years.
2 years down the line.
2 years down the line.
Yes.
Here we are.
Yes.
Your Excellency, your coat of arms is very unique. It has a dove, it has a heart, it has a tree, and it has the Good Shepherd. Why did you choose these particular symbols for your coat of arms?
Thank you. First, the dove is the sign of the Holy Spirit. It's a sign of peace. And our country, the world needs peace. It's a place where we need peace. And with peace, we'll have everything. And actually, peace is, as they say, is another word for development. Any country that is peaceful, it will grow. Any diocese that is peaceful will prosper in many ways. Then, when you look at the tree with the fruits and with the deep roots, I think I'll be thinking about the rootedness of our faith from the missionaries who came, from the faith of our people, because we say that Africans are notoriously religious. So people have the faith in them, they are religious, it has deep roots, it has started. We can only now nurture it, we can grow it together so that it becomes this big tree where, like the kingdom of God, where all birds of air will come and nest. Again, going back to our roots, our first bishop, Bishop William Dunn, his motto was, your kingdom come. And now, it's like what I developed myself because mine is, your will be done. So it's the kingdom of God which has grown. Let the will of God be done. And my wish is to be a good shepherd. And being a good shepherd, you have to join with the flock. We must participate together. And then let Jesus be our guide in whatever we do. So I was just choosing it from what we have, from the reality of our diocese, the reality of our country, and wanting that if we can work together to have this peace, there will be a lot of prosperity, and we can work together. Actually, that tree grows with the deep roots, but the soil is also brown, be able to depict what our country is like. The Diocese of Kitui is a dry area, but see, with the deep roots, you can go for water wherever it is and nourish our people.
And draw the water for the people.
Yes.
Your Excellency, Kenya is, thankfully, a relatively well-off country in East Africa and has a relatively stable political situation, and at the same time suffers, naturally, like many of these countries, challenges.
Yes.
One of these challenges you raised, and I'm going to read because you mentioned this in a quote, and I'd like to draw this to your attention. It's plagued by corruption.
Yes.
And you spoke out against this at a funeral mass where 33 Catholics, many church choir members and religious were killed in a bus accident. And you stated, quote, "We have been twisted by corruption. We find it normal to do things that should not exist. Some people tread where devils dread to step in." Briefly, what happened at this accident, and how was this a consequence of corruption? And why is corruption still such a plague in Kenya?
I'll tell you, Mark, this is just what they call a tip of the iceberg, just one thing that you see, but corruption is a cancer in itself. And it's dreadful because it is the soul of a community, of a society, of a country. And saying this was not just trying to condemn, but to open people's eyes to realize without corruption, Kenya would prosper. Every country would flourish if we did what we are supposed to do and did it well, not look for shortcuts, because anything, small act of corruption, like building of roads, then you are given that contract, you do a shoddy job, there are potholes. A bus will hit that pothole and then will go and crash. It will kill people. A bridge, like that bridge, because it doesn't rain always, but when there is rain, the driver just went straight. It was like driving into hell. And he didn't know that it's broken at one part. So you cannot blame him, but you have to blame the system, because why did it have to wait for that? Do we have only to wait and realize where dangers are? If we respected life and people did what's supposed to be done, then we would not have loss of lives most of the times. There will be no lack of drugs in hospitals because they are there. The roads will be well maintained. People will get jobs because they are qualified, not through shortcuts, and everything would go well. But without being idealistic, just to try and streamline and kill corruption, Kenya and another country, if we could fight corruption and people follow the right ways, we would really prosper.
I'd like to draw one more example to your attention.
Yes.
About this corruption, also in the context of the politics.
Yes.
You stated, you cautioned against politicians who take advantage of women during political campaigns, stating, quote, "We are currently preparing for the general elections in Kenya. Women are often being misused during the electioneering period. I plead with you Catholic women to stand strong in faith and be vigilant to avoid being misused." What is happening here? What is the challenge, and how are politicians misusing Catholic women or women in general in Kenya for their own political gain?
I happen to be the bishop in charge of the pastoral and lay apostolate in the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops. And this brings together all the women organizations, the Catholic men organization, and the youth organization. So you see, this is like the heart of the family. But naturally, men, they will struggle to bring them together, and they try, but women are already united. They work, they have their small groups, merry-go-rounds, they have their unions, they meet together, and it's a very good entry point for politicians because you already find a system, and they are together. So I think I was addressing women in Gong for the World Union of Women, and they had come for their mass and their celebrations. I was trying to challenge them to use their power, their groups and their union to fight against bad leaders, bring in good leaders, because they form the majority of the voters.
There's also a challenge with young people. You've made a very clear message for young, principally men, young boys, I suppose, who either incite violence or attack politicians, predominantly through social media. And I know you've made a very strong stand about this as well. What is the challenge there, and how can you talk with the young people in this question?
The challenge is young men, mainly the boys, they are strong. They are the ones who would be used negatively now, because the women will be used to get to others and then bring them together, vote for a certain person. But men, young men, will be used as a counter to this, because I could bring 10 strong young men to come and disperse a group of 1,000 women. So that once you come and say, get out of here, or you bring a bit of chaos in that place, people will disperse because you can throw stones, you can fight, you can beat people.
At public rallies and
public
things
rallies,
like this.
in instances like this. So you can come and shout pro or against someone. I can just say, when Mark comes, just come be there and be shouting, jeer him, ridicule him, so that he is not heard. Then also they can be bought, as I said, to go and fight. and disturb meetings, they will be bought to use mass media so that they can, through the social media, this can be both men and women, to write negative things about others. Even maybe to start to exaggerate about someone. They say, this one, so-and-so, has come into this scene and now stormed the scene with might, with power, and this one going to win. So social media has been used to influence people negatively, sometimes against one person or for another person, not because one is good, but because you are using this social media to reach more people, trying to discredit one and paint another one in a better way for material gain.
I suppose at the root of all of this is poverty.
Yes.
16% of the population live below the poverty line. The church in many situations is a final recourse because perhaps in the rural areas the government is not present or not sufficiently present. How does the church work in this area of poverty and development?
We are calling it empowerment, and we thank God because the program for this, for our people to realize, to stand firm, it is about I, which is also with the you, so that we work together as children of God. How do we move people out of this? Because the youth are being misused because they don't have money, they don't have employment, sometimes very, very glorious promises which may not be fulfilled. But we must put them in a place whereby they believe in themselves and do something for themselves. So the church has been the forefront of educating people on the role of self-reliance so that we can work, use whatever we have well, and also the patience to wait until you get where you are supposed to get. So through our programs, helping the young ones, helping the women also in their own groups, men in their small groups, wherever they are, even those who are working, a sense of savings, a sense of detachment from what is evil. Like a lot of our youth would go into alcoholism, drug abuse, which again destroys them because whatever they get, they don't use it well. Strong families, these are the values that we inculcate in people so that now we have a future. And on this, the church, what has done, the main thing has been through education. That education, having starting schools, giving scholarship to the young ones. These people, when they grow knowing what the church has done for them, when now they get jobs, they realize the role of the church in their lives and they're able to support their churches, support other people to grow, so that now the community is gradually changing as we are seeing in our communities.
I'd like to address another area which is a growing challenge, regrettably, in Kenya, and that is the number of refugees you have. I believe Kenya is one of the greatest recipients of refugees in East Africa. I think you have over 500,000 refugees from South Sudan, from Somalia. And from other places, Ethiopia, etc. My question to you is, the World Food Program recently announced that they, as a consequence of the global hunger, this challenge that we are confronting in this time as a consequence of the war in Ukraine and the inability of the harvests to occur, and also in Africa, the jihadism which has chased people from their lands. All of these, which is provoking a problem of hunger, of global hunger. And the World Food Program said they are going to have to cut their service to these refugees in Kenya by up to 50%. Again, the church in many ways may be called to step in. Is this something how do you see this problem, and how do you see the role of the church in something so vast?
That's a radical decision, and you can't avoid it because with the COVID-19, even most of the donors have reduced their funding to Africa because it has been a worldwide phenomenon, and the people also who are giving, also their businesses went down, focus in different areas, like you have said in Ukraine and other suffering areas. That has impact even on the local donations too, the local programs that we carry out. But the issue of refugees in Kenya, which has been there for over the years, Kenya is like the center in East Africa, the place we have, although we have difficulties, but the center of peace. Our neighbors, other than in the south with the Tanzania, which is now stable, Uganda stabilizing. When you look at the other areas, like I said, northern South Sudan, even North Sudan, when you go to Ethiopia, you go to Eritrea, you come to our friends in Somalia, we are our neighbors. There are difficulties, and people have to flee and come to our country who are hosted in our refugee camps And we thank the World Food Program and the UN and all the other donors who support that. And we say it's a home for everyone. There was a threat one time, they were saying they're going to close the refugee camps and send the people back to their homes. Then even as a church, we say this is not a solution. We must be open. And this is a theme of the Holy Father, Pope Francis, how we need to be close to the migrants, open our houses, open our homes to be close to each other. So the challenge has also been to our people to realize how we need to journey with each other, a sustained friendship, even with the refugees, to realize they can also be accommodated, feel like they're at home, and when the situation gets better, that they can go back to their countries. One of the things that we are trying to do to assist also our neighboring countries to stabilize, so that because home is best. They say east or west is home is the best. If now we can have stability in southern Sudan and the people go back, if we can have stability in the Sudan and not in Somalia and the people go back, the better for the people and the better also for our country. But this is something that we are growing into. As a church, we are trying to work together, even in the religious dialogue, multi-sectoral approach that everyone feels at home and that we work together to stabilize these people so that when they go home, they have also learned something from us and they can go and preach peace to their people and in their countries.
This is an enormous gift that the country is able to give to these refugees, and also the church is able to give to this population in such need of humanitarian aid, but also pastoral care, spiritual care. Mm-hmm. The church is growing very rapidly in Kenya. Thanks be to God, it is growing. And what do you attribute this growth that is now coming up, the growth of Christianity in Kenya? Why do you see what factors are playing into this remarkable phase of the church in Kenya?
As I noted there, we know part of our philosophy is that Africans are notoriously religious. Will the people attach themselves to religion of whatever kind? They believe in God is almost natural. Now believing in a faith, the God of Jesus Christ, comes again to people through education, through schools, through the churches, involvement of our people, because the missionaries came, preach the faith, and those who receive the faith, they are transmitting it to other people. So it's a multiplying, there's a multiplier factor. And people realize the place of God in their lives, even through difficulties, but the faith is able to grow. Unlike in other parts where maybe people have to question themselves, like, should I go to church, should I not go to church, where there are issue of scandals, the issue of materialism, that people find the place of God and associate success with God. It is drawing many to the faith, and when they come as a personal experience, because people come to celebrate. When you go for religious worship, it's not just the priest, not the bishop, but us all who contribute. The choir is singing, the youth are participating, the dances. Everybody feels that I have a reason not to go to church. Like when you're sick, something very important, whatever it could be, but people always struggle to get to church, even when they are sick, because they know even by going to church, it's like going to a hospital. They feel loved, they feel affirmed, and they feel that God is with them in that affair. So I think these are some of the things that are attracting people to religion. And unfortunately, maybe also to so many other religions can be also commercialized. But in essence, I know people feel the presence of God and the answers from God and put religion first because they know, as it says, ask and you'll be given.
And the further good news is the fact that you may have your very own saint, your first Kenyan saint. The news broke recently that Cardinal Maurice Michael Otunga has been declared a servant of God by Pope Francis, opening a path to possible canonization. What made him so unique, and what would this mean for the Kenyan Church to have a first Kenyan saint?
I'll tell you something just came to me one time I was preaching, and I looked at the people in the cathedral. This cathedral was opened as a church in 1973. The people are still coming to that as a parish from the 50s, 59. I said, I looked at these empty chairs. One time I came when there was nobody, and I looked there and I said, goodness, on these pews have sat saints who are not named. People have sat here like you, must be in heaven. And I know for sure, many people sitting on these pews today, one day you'll be in heaven. And I just went and sat down. just to meditate about our life and sainthood, what to mean, because that's the ultimate goal of our life. So connecting this now to Cardinal Otunga, whom I knew. I used to come to a seminary when I was in Nairobi. I was the Archbishop of Nairobi. Then by coincidence, what I remember most in 1995 is the year I became a deacon. And in September that year, in July, August 15th, there was the profession of the Assumption Sisters in Thika, which is near Nairobi. And I was the only deacon attending that ceremony because my cousin was also professing, making a final profession. Then when I went there, I was told to serve as a deacon. And I served Cardinal Otunga for the first time. It was a big thing for me. I could feel holiness coming out of him. And the way he treated me so well, I not prepared. But everything went well because he was not intimidating. It was a prayer. Then soon after that, this was August, in September when we went back to the seminary, I was called to serve at the Pope's Mass when he came to Africa and came to Kenya to lodge the ecclesia in Africa. Again, shaking hands with John Paul II. That time, what is your name and what do you do? How do you love? Just in a very brief time, a lot we shared. Then sitting with him up there as a deacon and him on the main altar and give me Holy Communion were things that have remained with me. So when you talk about Otunga, Cardinal Otunga, servant of God, I really look forward to see him become a saint the way I've been happy to see John Paul II become a saint. People who are close to my heart, people who I've journeyed with, and I know much will mean for the church in Kenya and the church in Africa to have our own saint, among the many saints and the many others who have never been mentioned or may never be mentioned. Is a huge encouragement to everyone that if he has made it, we can also make it.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for having been with us today in our program.
Thank you very much, Mark, and I appreciate having been given this chance to be with you and to speak to the whole world about what is happening in our diocese.
Thank you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today in our program, Where God Weeps. And if you'd like to know more about the situation of the Church in Kenya, perhaps how you might be able to help through your prayers or concrete action, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.